Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of this series on the doctrine of the Trinity from the Old Testament. With you here in studio, Fadi, and also joining me, my dear brother, Anthony Rogers. Welcome back, Anthony.
Great to be back.
So today, we are still going to continue with our basically exploration of the mention of the angel of the Lord. And last time, I believe we talked about his person being someone that can forgive sins. Now, today, we are going to take another look at the person of the angel of the Lord, but from different passages. Which one we're going to start with?
So we'll look at the account in Numbers 22. This is a long account, so we won't look at the whole thing. And basically, if people need a reminder of what it's about in context, Balaam is kind of a prophet for hire. So he doesn't really speak for the Lord. He's not faithful, but he's got the name of a prophet. And so what's happening is a foreign king wants Balaam to curse Israel.
Right.
And so he enlists Balaam for this end. And what ends up happening is Balaam learns that, he can't do anything one way or the other. And so Balak is upset. And we pick up the story in Numbers 22, where it says that Balaam arose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the leaders of Moab. But God was angry because he was going. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. So here's the angel of the Lord. Balaam is acting contrary to the ways of the Lord in the name of being a prophet. And the angel of the Lord shows up as his adversary to oppose him. It says, now he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, the donkey turned off from the way and went into the field. Now, this is a really humorous story, if you take a step back and just look at it. But basically the donkey can see the angel of the Lord, but Balaam can't. And, when we think of a donkey, we're supposed to think of a stupid creature and so forth. And the idea is that here's Balaam pretending to be a prophet, a seer, somebody who can see divine things, and yet he's blind to the presence of the angel of the Lord, and the donkey isn't.
That's right.
Right? And so the story goes on. It says, Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed all the way to the ground. So he skipped a few verses here, but what had happened was 3 times the donkey recognizes the angel of the Lord is there, and the donkey turns aside, and then Balaam punishes the donkey for it, right? So here's what happens in verse 32. It says, Then the angel of the Lord said to him, Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out as an adversary because your way was contrary to me. But the donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I would surely have killed you just now and let her live. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you were standing in the way against me. Now then, if it is displeasing to you, I will turn back. So again, clearly you have the angel of the Lord and the idea that he is the one that is being transgressed against. So the angel of the Lord is again being presented as a divine person. And what I've particularly tried to draw attention to here, because it's going to be really relevant to the next episode, is the fact that how he's described here. And people may have just sort of missed it, but notice that it says in verse 31, he's standing there with a drawn sword in his hand. Right.
And that reminds us of like the Joshua account.
Right, which is what we're going to go to. So our next passage here is Joshua. In Joshua, just prior to the Battle of Jericho, we're told that, now remember, people may not recall this, but Joshua was Moses' aide. Right. He was close to Moses. But when you look at the accounts in the Torah, Moses often will go up to the Lord on the mountain, and Joshua goes part way. So Joshua is not allowed to go all the way up. But now Joshua has become the successor, right? And so it's fitting that he would now have an encounter with that same person. That's what we see in Joshua 5. Prior to the Battle of Jericho, Joshua suddenly meets somebody for the face to face for the first time. It says in verse 13, "Now it came about when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing opposite him." So he appears in the form of a man with his drawn sword in his hand. Right? The only time you've heard this language before in the Torah is in the account of Numbers, where it's associated with the angel. So here's this man standing with drawn sword. It says, "And Joshua went to him and said to him, 'Are you for us or for our adversaries?' And the reply is remarkable, right?
Yeah,
he says,
no.
"No. Rather, I indeed come now as captain of the host of the Lord." The idea is you're either on my side or the wrong side. I'm not on, it's not that I'm on your side or their side. It's that I'm on my side, and you have to, decide where you're at, right?
That's right. That's right.
And then it says, "Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, 'What does my Lord have to say to his servant?'" And that brings us to the next few verses, where it says, and I should stop here, by the way, and say something about that phrase, "captain of the Lord's host." The idea is this is the one who rules over the armies of heaven.
Right.
And the language here is very similar to it's the same, really, as the language used for the Messiah in Daniel 9, for example. Messiah is called the prince, or the captain, if you will, in Daniel 9.
Right.
And it says that he'll be cut off. Well, so here the prince is referred to as reigning over the heavenly host. He has charge of the heavenly host, kind of like Jesus in the New Testament when he said, "Don't you know that all I have to do is call and 6 legions of angels are at my disposal?"
Right.
Right. So here Joshua encounters this one, but we have a further indication of who it is. We've already got the tie-in with the drawn sword in his hand, but notice what the captain of the Lord's host says to Joshua. In verse 15, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you're standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Now, what does that remind us of?
Moses' an encounter with God at the burning bush.
Right. So here again, the same language as is used for the angel of the Lord on a previous occasion. Like I said before, all these things are consistent with each other. They all tie together. They're harmonious, even though they're being written by different individuals. But now, pay close attention, because notice, so far it's said that a man has appeared to him. He's got a drawn sword in his hand, and he tells Moses the place on which he's standing is holy. But notice how it goes on in context. Verse 1 says, "Now Jericho was tightly shut because the sons of Israel, no one went out and no one came in. The Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king and the valiant warriors.'" Now suddenly the one who's standing before him, who's called a man, is simply referred to as the Lord.
Right.
So once again, like in all previous cases, we've seen that the angel of the Lord is not only described in a way that would only befit a divine person, right? The ground is made holy at his presence. He has the authority to forgive sins, these sorts of things. Now he's again explicitly called the Lord.
Right. Right. And in the next one, we're going to revisit Exodus 3.
And that's because it reminds us who it was that appeared in the burning bush. And, in verse 2, it says that the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And then as we go to the next slide in verses 4 and 5, we're reminded in verse 5, he said, "Don't come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you're standing is holy ground."
Right. So it's kind of like a neat way for you to come back again, visit this, so we can now tie it to Joshua, and now people can see there is similarity here. It's not a coincidence, by the way. I mean, there is
Right.
sometimes the Lord progressively kind of like revealing more to the Israelites and to Joshua as well as the new successor and leader. And I would assume Joshua is starting to get the picture as well, of what's happening here.
Right. And so, I mean, it's remarkable. You have from Genesis through Exodus, through Numbers. Remember Leviticus.
We're still in the Torah, and we
yeah.
just barely get out
We
of
skipped
it,
Leviticus not because
Yeah.
Leviticus isn't important. Leviticus isn't really giving us much of the history, right?
It's
right
the law
there,
and conduct and things like that.
Right there, it speaks mostly of how the priests are supposed to perform sacrifices and stuff. So it's sort of a pause on the history to talk about the rules that apply to the officiating at the tabernacle.
Yep.
Right. So when you go through Genesis, Exodus, Numbers again picks up the narrative, and then Deuteronomy, and then Joshua, and so forth. And so just following through the story, at the center of this story is the angel of the Lord, spoken of in one way or another. You know, the captain of the Lord's host, called the Lord, called God, and he's the one that's typically the one who's appearing and revealing God to men.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And this is powerful, of course. And what would we be talking about next? Are we still going to continue, of course, with the angel of the Lord?
So yeah, we'll look at some more on the angel of the Lord, just tracing out the history a little bit more. We'll see the angel of the Lord in the book of Judges, and there we learn some really important things. In particular, we see that the angel of the Lord is worshipped. If the angel of the Lord is not God, he would not be worshipped, and yet that's exactly what we see in the book of Judges. We'll see that next time.
Wonderful. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely enjoying this deep dive into the Scripture, the Old Testament, seeing how these passages tie together and correspond with each other, and now the big picture is becoming more and more clearer. Hopefully you've been watching the previous episodes, and hopefully you've been watching them more than once, and I pray that also that you've been taking notes, and I also pray that you have been exercising, putting them to practice in your dialogue with others. Until we meet again, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. Please like our video, and we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sira International. And be sure also to click the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we upload new videos into the channel. And finally, I like to prayerfully encourage you to become a patron through Patreon. Your giving is much needed and will enable us to produce more and more of videos like this so that we can publish them on a weekly basis. So thank you in advance.